here. This is the Coles County Candidates Forum featuring Democratic candidates running in the 15th Congressional District election. I am Jeannie Ludlow, and I will be your moderator today. As we begin, first of all, I'd like to ask you if you have a handheld computer of any kind to please silence it. And I also want to thank the Charleston Huddle and the Coles Progressives for planning and co-hosting this opportunity for us to hear from our candidates, and also for all the work that you all do in our community. I will be varying the order of response among our candidates for the questions, so I'll ask the candidates to attend to my telling you who's going first. That way no one person is always first to speak or getting the last word. These are the rules. Opening statements. Each candidate has up to 2 minutes to give an opening statement. Paula is in the back corner with signs telling you when you are running out of time, and we will stop you at the end of your 2 minutes. Candidates will take turns answering each of 5 prepared questions. Each candidate will be given 1 minute per question. Questions will then be taken from the audience. Candidates will again have 1 minute to answer each question. For this portion of the forum, each candidate will also be allowed 2 30-second follow-up responses to 2 questions about which they feel strongly. And then following that, each candidate will have about 2 minutes for a closing statement. For the audience members, if you would like to ask a question, please sign up at the table on your right to submit a question or request a card on which you can write your question. Cards will be, they're back here in the corner. Cards will be, and there are some on this table as well. Cards will be collected and I will read your question. So if you want to say the question yourself, you just sign up. If you want me to read your question, write it on the card. The candidates have provided me, I'm actually going to hand this to you, John. Hold it down so it's not making any noise just yet. The candidates have provided me with biographical information that I will read to you. We'll start with Kevin Gaither on your right. He grew up in Sullivan, Illinois, where he was involved with his grandfather's farm, was a journalist, played the pipe organ for church, and was actively engaged in challenging the community in efforts to pass a school referendum. He graduated from Rose-Hulman in Terre Haute in 1998, where he challenged the campus and Terre Haute's conservative communities on issues of diversity as a fierce advocate for the LGBTQ community. He served in AmeriCorps in poverty-stricken neighborhoods in Indianapolis and was elected to serve on federally mandated healthcare advisory boards there. Moving back to the 15th District in 2013, Kevin became involved in his community as he always has. In 2018, he ran for the Democratic nomination for the 15th District. His grassroots campaign won 62% of the vote through common sense messaging focused on the entire 15th District. Welcome, Kevin. Next to him, John W. Hersey Jr. was born on Scott Air Force Base and spent most of his childhood moving to different military installations around the world. For the last 20 years, he has lived in the Metro East area of Southern Illinois, where he has barely eked out a living as a waiter, telemarketer, gas station attendant, construction worker, meat packer, door-to-door salesman, forklift operator, delivery driver, house cleaner, cook, and the guy who puts all those ads in the middle of your newspaper that you throw away as soon as you get them. He finally graduated college in 2013 and fulfilled his lifelong dream of becoming an English teacher with health insurance and making $40,000 a year. Dr. Craig Morton was born and raised in Salem, Illinois. His first job was working in his father's small business, where he saw the importance of healthcare and its impact on everyday life. With a Doctor of Pharmacy from the University of Illinois, he worked his way up to Director of Pharmacy at a Level 1 Trauma Center at Mount Sinai Hospital in Chicago. Dr. Morton returned to his hometown of Salem with his wife of 20 years to focus on raising 3 children. Desiring to serve his community, he purchased his father's independent pharmacy where he employs 10 people. In 2018, he was honored by the Salem Chamber of Commerce as Business Person of the Year. In 2015, he was elected to the Salem City Council, where he is currently serving his 2nd term. Dr. Morton says that he will champion our small community values, making sure there are economic opportunities for everyone. He's not extreme liberal or conservative, but is fighting for what's right for our community. And Erica C. Weaver is currently an assistant public defender in Coles County, serves on the Mattoon Board of Education, and is a mom of 3 amazing young adults. She's an alumna of Lakeland College and a 2-time alumna of EIU, having earned her Bachelor of Science in Kinesiology, Sports and Recreation, and a Master of Science in College Student Affairs. She earned her Juris Doctor from Loyola University Chicago School of Law, and she entered this race because she wants every family to have the opportunity to create and define their American dream, but without the hardships she endured. Her campaign reflects and embodies her life, her work, and her heart for service. She offers integrity and accountability to the people of the 15th District. Her work ethic, she says, is unparalleled and unchanging. At this time, I will give each candidate 2 minutes to offer an opening statement, and we will start with Mr. Hersey, and we will go alphabetically, and Mr. Gaither will complete. Thanks. Whatever you're comfortable doing.
Sitting's good for everybody.
Sitting good? That's fine.
Sure.
All right, so hi everybody.
Oh,
That's good. That's good. So, even though I'm an English teacher, I'm a little nervous talking in front of people. I can't call any of your parents or give you guys homework, so cut me some slack here. And since I'm a teacher, I'd like to start this off in probably the most boring and uninteresting way possible, with a math lesson. So in 2018, 181,000 people voted for the Republican incumbent. It's just under 75,000 for the Democratic challenger. That's a difference of 105,000 votes. And I want you guys to keep that in mind this afternoon. Now, even if we increase voter registration by 20%, which would be fantastic, and even if we increased voter turnout by another 20%, also fantastic, we would still need to flip about 40,000 people, a little over 40,000 people that voted for a Republican last time in order to win this election. And that's never happened. Speaking of which, let me give you guys a history lesson. The Democratic Party's solution to that's what I'm like. I'm not screeching in your ear. The Democratic Party's solution to that, I can do this, my classroom's bigger than this.
Can you stand, though? There are folks in the back who can't see, so
Sure.
we are going to
Yep.
ask you to stand as
That's
you
fine.
speak. Yeah.
So the Democratic solution to that problem for the last 20 years has been to run a series of issues-based moderate candidates with prior local elected or party experience, and we've had predictably disappointing results over the last 2 decades. I would suggest that part of the problem is that the people in this district, not the Republicans, the Democrats, the people in this district are not issues-based voters, they're values-based voters. And so one of the things they don't value is a moderate. They don't like half measures, and neither do I, by the way. And so I would suggest that we need to try to do something different. So this afternoon I want to do 2 things. I want to convince you that I can do issues, that I know issues, that I can talk about specific problems, factors, and solutions that are going on in our country right now. And then after I do that, I want to convince you that none of that's important and that's not what's going to win this election. Thank you.
Okay, I'll take it.
I'd also like to thank the Coles County Progressives, Charleston Library, and Charleston Huddle for putting on this debate, and all of you for coming here today. My name is Craig Morton. As you heard from my biography, I'm an independent pharmacist, small business owner, and Salem City Council person. Obviously, my number 1 focus is healthcare. Currently, our healthcare system is unsustainable. We must guarantee everybody affordable access to the best healthcare possible. Also, our small towns and cities are under threat of extinction, as we know it. I've observed Salem for over 50 years, struggled to maintain its sustainability. Our small cities are becoming grocery store, pharmacy, and furniture store deserts. It feels like death by 1,000 cuts by the government and corporate America. We need to promote pro-growth business and labor agendas and ensure the 15th District is included in any transportation and infrastructure planning. As a small business owner and council person, I am in constant contact with our educators, farmers, senior citizens, and factory workers. I understand what is truly important to the citizens of the 15th District. Over the next hour, you will hear why I am the best and most electable Democratic candidate for the 15th Congressional race. And I'm asking for your vote on March 17th. Thank you.
Good afternoon. As you've heard, my name is Erica C. Weaver. It should be very easy to remember because I'm the only Erica in this race. I'm the only woman in this race. I am running because I do believe in issues and values because they're connected. Every issue that comes out of this district, every issue that comes out of any district is based on people's values and what's most important to them. So what's most important to me? Education. I am a substitute teacher, I am an educator, I have been adjunct faculty, I have a history in education. I wouldn't be here today were it not for my education. I am not running because of the hardships that I endured, but in spite of those things, and I know what people are struggling with. I know what it feels like to have pain of poverty. I know the patience to endure that and then transition out of it, and I want to help people not feel that every day, over and over again. I want people to not have to worry about housing security. I don't want people to worry about food security. And those are the things that I see every day, either working in schools or working in the public defender's office. I advocate for children. That's important to me. Those are my values. My children are extremely important. I know that everyone else cares about their children. I want to help people have a better opportunity. So I too am asking for your vote. I wholeheartedly believe that I am the best person for this nomination and the best person to advocate for this district in DC. Thank you.
My name's Kevin Gaither. Thankfully, I've met so many of the people in this room, and it's so great to have a sunny day. We haven't had that many of that in the winter, whatever that is these days. So yes, this is the town I live in. I live just around the corner. And I've been in every single community in this district so many times. And, over the last 3 years, visiting these communities every single year, it gets worse. And it's really tough. And I'm so glad that the 15th district has so many choices here in 2020 because we usually don't have any choices on the ballot. And that's a testament to the failures of the Republican Party, because they literally are attacking every single one of our values and every single one of the services that people rely on, like food stamps. How in the world can you work if you don't have food on the table for your family? That's what the Republican Party is attacking. Healthcare, they are literally trying to take away coverage for pre-existing conditions. That's what the Republican Party stands for. And our esteemed state representative, Chris Miller, his wife is the likely nominee to be our next U.S. House representative. And they represent the biggest threat to our values and principles, which is using religion as a weapon. And I gotta say, nobody understands that more than I do. I've seen that throughout my entire life. And we have to stand together in that fight. And when we do, we're going to win this in November. And I am so thrilled to be here. I cannot wait to answer your questions. And I know we're not going to get to all of them today. So after today, come up and ask us your questions and make sure that we answer them. Thank you.
All right, so we have 5 questions. Each candidate gets 1 minute for the question. For this question, we're going to start with Dr. Morton, and then we'll go to Ms. Weaver, and then Mr. Gaither, and then Mr. Hersey. What do you consider to be the most pressing economic issue facing our district, and what are your strategies for addressing it?
Community colleges are one of the biggest economic drivers in rural America. There's currently a critical skills gap that exists between labor and the labor that is provided. We need to ensure we have affordable career pathways for people to become educated for the careers that offer higher wages and, most importantly, jobs that are in demand. We must ensure our district has critical infrastructure such as high-speed internet and modernized transportation system. Thank you.
The issue that I see, and I would say issues, there's not just one, that is most important to this district, revolves around employment opportunities. People want to be employed. We have companies that are leaving. Are you not able to hear me? I'm sorry. Okay. I didn't know if I was holding it too close or too far. Turn it up. Okay. Employment opportunities. Can everyone hear me? Okay. Most people are looking to find employment and they're unable to do so either because the companies that they work for have closed, like LSC here in Mattoon, or because they are transitioning to other things. So we have companies who are closed, we have businesses that are no longer, and jobs that are no longer available. We have to give people employment and training, which I agree, that will help them to be ready for those jobs. And most of those jobs are now technology-based, and a lot of people don't have that experience. We have to make sure that we also, I know people are complaining about their taxes. With farming land, the taxes are different in certain counties, and so those lower counties are not catching up to the ones that are paying 3 to 4 times as much. The other issue for people is, I know in Effingham County, it's gun rights. And so those are the things that we have to address, and I'm not gonna talk about that now because I know that's another question, but those are the ones that I see.
What isn't an economic issue for our district? You know, a true U.S. House representative, and we haven't had one for 25 years, will lead the charge on having a strategic vision for the district, one that recognizes healthcare, education, infrastructure, energy, and our environment being all interrelated. Instead of this pessimistic view of Illinois we've come to expect from Republicans, I will fight for a positive economic view that lifts up workers, lifts up communities, and doesn't demean education, doesn't deny science, and won't use religion or ideology to divide us. Children increasingly come to school hungry, living in poverty, and have less access to affordable healthcare that addresses their increasingly complex conditions. And when they graduate, often they leave the state and never return. We have to stop that. You know, wouldn't it be amazing if we had kids graduate from high school and then they also, with that diploma, get a CNA license? Then they have a job right there in their community. They'll be staying here. I have a lot more to say. You cannot solve all of our economic issues in 1 minute. So let's ask some more questions about the economy, okay? Thank you.
All right, so yeah, whenever I hear about how great the economy's doing, I'm always wondering when some of that wealth is going to trickle its way on down to my school district and like music programs and after-school programs and social workers and infrastructure payments and maternity leave and all that stuff that we're supposed to get with 3% GDP growth, right? Because I'm not seeing it. And one of the ways that everyone's mentioned infrastructure, but one of the ways that there's political intersectionality going on here is that no one's mentioned that the heart of our infrastructure is going to be funded by concrete. And concrete, of course, leaves this huge carbon footprint. So we have an opportunity to boost our economy by subsidizing and investing in companies and technologies that can help reduce our carbon footprint while we still build our infrastructure and help everybody out and make our climate a better place to be at the same time. So that's just one thing that we can do that's nonpartisan, not bipartisan, but nonpartisan, to help fix our environment and our economy.
Thank you. For the next question, Ms. Weaver will go first. The majority of Americans want quality health care to be accessible and affordable for all. What do you see as the best way to move toward that?
So what I propose in terms of giving access to affordable and quality health care is that we invest into more mobile units. We know that those work for dental services, for mammograms in our area. We can expand that. Being in a rural district, we don't have the opportunity to have a hospital every so many miles. But what we can do is we can give people access to health care by way of mobile units for our veterans, for our women, for our children, for dental services and mental health services. And then we don't have to worry about public transportation because the services are coming to them. That's what I would do. Thank you.
The 15th district, 20% of the voting population is over 65. And that is going to be the real issue with long-term care and assisted living. So we really need to focus on increasing Medicare and Medicaid reimbursement rates. A lot of people don't realize that Medicare only pays for 100 days of skilled care in a long-term care facility. If we don't do that, we're going to be leaving our seniors out to dry. Let's see. Ultimately, we have to come together on what we agree on healthcare, instead of focusing on what we disagree. We have to focus on the outcomes for people, especially children, especially women, and and nobody ever talks about this around here, but we have to protect women's right to choose, because that's under attack right now. If you look at Indiana, they are literally putting abortion and murder as murder and on as law, and we have to make that a central issue. Thank you.
So I was one of the people, the millions of people whose life was saved by Obamacare. I had an easily treatable pre-existing condition that sometimes can be fixed with antibiotics, minor surgery, and I couldn't afford the consulting, the initial consulting fee, let alone hospitalization, surgery, medication, all that stuff afterwards. And it almost killed me. And that's wrong. In fact, when I voted in 2008 for Obama, I was voting to save my life. And I just barely got help in time. So this is why I say it's about values and not issues, because I don't care whether you call it Medicare for all, or you're gonna call it Trump care, or Obamacare, or the ACA. I'm guided by a series of guidelines to make sure that working people are covered, that all people are able to see doctors and get access to health care cheaply and easily and quickly. That we don't have to expand our, you shouldn't have to pay more than one premium. Anyone here, I know not raising hands, but anyone here pay prescription drug insurance on top of your regular insurance? That's two insurances. That's not how insurance works, right? So those kind of guidelines are what I'm looking for, no matter what you call that program. Because if the private industry isn't going to step up and do it, then the government needs to do that.
As I stated before, the health system that we have in this country is unsustainable, and it is getting worse by the year and by the month. In the 1990s, that bottle of insulin, the same one that we have now, cost $10. I remember it to this day. Now it is about $300 or $400. There's no way that can cost that much more to produce now than we were doing back then. The generic pipeline for those types of biologicals, medicines, is broken and or is non-existent. It needs to be updated and enforced. The Affordable Care Act may not be perfect, but we need to start trying to stop watering it down and actually improve on it with a 1-year, 2-year, and 3-year plans. In addition, the federal government should be negotiating the price of prescription drugs. Thank you.
The climate crisis is the most urgent problem facing humanity. What will you do to get the United States to act on the climate crisis and set an example for the world?
Climate change is a serious threat to both our national security and economy. The idea that we're going to be able to stop bushfires with raking is frankly ridiculous. And we're not going to be able to stop flooding with recycling alone. What we should be doing is focusing on what we can do right here in our backyard, because it's flooding down south right now in our district. We need to invest in our waterways, in 500-year flood walls, in ditches and drainage, in new pipes and sewage treatment in every single community throughout rural America. That's jobs, good paying union jobs everywhere. Instead, we have an administration focused on stealing from the military to build a darn styrofoam wall that doesn't even make us more safe. We also need to focus on continuing to decrease our own carbon emissions. We've been actually pretty good at that in the last 10 years until the Trump administration. We're going to do that by investing in our brick and mortar with efficient buildings and a power grid that is both diverse and able to take on multiple individual investors in the solar energy market. This promotes entrepreneurs as well as a self-sufficient energy economy that protects our national and regional energy security. Thank you so much.
So it seems to me the biggest dividing line on climate change and the ongoing environmental crisis isn't that it's happening or whether we can do something, but it seems like the line is whether or not we have to prioritize the environment or the economy or our own lifestyles. And I think that's a false binary. And again, with this intersectionality and values, not issues, one of the ways we see that is in our economy with hog farming. Hog farming is Illinois is number 4 in hog farming in the nation. Clinton County, which is in the 15th district, number 1 in the whole nation. So most of us know that hog farms, livestock produces a tremendous amount of methane that's bad for the environment. But instead of being a problem, I see an opportunity, because it turns out that hog farmers are also concerned about this. It turns out that hogs in warmer climates produce less meat. So our hog farmers in this state have a vested interest in reducing their emissions and battling climate change, so that not only can we have a better planet, but that we can also have competitive business people and entrepreneurs throughout this country. So that's one labor-based solution that we have to trying to fix our ongoing climate crisis.
We need to truly acknowledge that this is a real crisis and in addition, a national security issue. As a nation, we need to implement real and permanent tax incentives for commercial and residential buildings to improve their energy efficiency. Secondly, all current and future federal funding decisions need to be made with a climate change component involved. By setting an example of leadership in the world, we have to get back into the Paris Accord. The Accord may not be perfect, but it is a starting point. Thank you.
To address the issue of climate change, what we need to do is we need to create legislature that supports more green and more clean services. To do that, we need to support funding our municipalities as they make the transition, making sure that those services are affordable for the people in those areas and that those jobs are available in the district. We need to encourage companies that support clean services to come back into rural areas and then fund and provide employment opportunities. Thank you.
Given the breadth of federal investments from social programs to national defense, what are your priorities for where we should expand, maintain, and cut back?
That, no offense to anybody, but I think that in a 21st century global economy, terms like expand, maintain, and cut back are somewhat outdated statistics. For example, when you look at our status of forces agreement in South Korea, that not only gives us ballistic missile systems that keep our country safe and keep our allies safe, but it also gives us a trade agreement that gives ordinary Americans low-cost consumer electronic goods that we all want and need, and that provides an economic benefit. So I think there's a lot of killing two birds with one stone to be going on with our budget. And again, if we have a values, not an issues-based approach, then we can make that work for us. That's all I got on the budget.
We used to be a nation that waged war on poverty. Now it feels like we're waging war on the poorest of Americans. We have to make sure our programs are giving a hand up to increase and strengthen the middle class, ensuring that they have an opportunity to earn a living wage. We must continue to address federal waste and abuse in the system. Additionally, we have to come up with strategies to tackle the federal deficit. In regards to our military spending, we must support our troops and bring them home from the Middle East. The cost of the Iraq War will be felt for many decades, and we must bring our troops and money back from the Middle East for investment in the 15th District. Thank you.
With regard to spending and federal funding, what I would increase is our funding to education. We have several mandates, federal mandates, that are not fully funded. They are only partially funded, and we're asking for the money and it's not being appropriated. It actually isn't even being discussed. Those things are being tabled, and those are the things that we need to make sure are funded so that we can make sure that people have quality education in every neighborhood, and it's not just based on subjectivity and taxes and vouchers and other things. With regard to what I would maintain, we need to maintain our Social Security and our retirement plans that we've had people, and we had a generation of people invest into because we made a promise to them that it would be there for them, and now those things are being attacked. So that's what I would support and make sure that we maintain. With regard to cutting, I would say that I'm not a big fan of us spending a lot of money on wars, especially in other countries. We need to be more responsible with the way that we handle those issues. Thank you.
Yeah, we're not going to be cutting Social Security and Medicare. We actually need to be expanding those programs. I'm kind of tired of seeing Grandma and Grandpa, working two jobs in order to keep the lights on and get their food and prescription drugs paid for. The big banks got the bailouts, but the retirees didn't for the retirement funds getting, sucked into the financial collapse. We have to do the right thing for them. We do that by increasing the Social Security cap for high-income earners. It's pretty simple. Even Shimka's actually supported that. Not only will this be a boost to the economy, it'll also increase the health and well-being of retirees and people living with disabilities. That'll actually decrease the cost for Medicare in the long term because they'll be healthier. When a retiree doesn't have to make those tough choices, their quality of life will improve. That's a good thing for everybody. We also need to make it easier for people living with disabilities to work, because that's a good thing for them, gets them out into the community, and everybody will be better for it. We all need to come together, and when we see each other as human beings, and that we're all working together, you know what, the community becomes more whole. Thank you.
What is your approach to dealing with the problems of gun violence and easy access to firearms in the United States? Dr. Morton.
I'm up, right?
I support the Second Amendment and believe we should have a nationwide conceal and carry permit system. As a parent and healthcare provider, we need to make sure we're using the common sense approach to gun legislation in order to ensure the safety of all Americans. For examples, we can close the boyfriend loophole that currently exists and also make sure the gun laws are actually being enforced. In order to relieve the burden on local agencies, federal funding for school resource officers and school security is also needed. Also, we need to reinstate federal funding for research in gun safety.
My position on gun violence and the Second Amendment, I believe they're separate issues. I think the Second Amendment right to have and bear arms, I have no objection to that. I'm a firearm owner. I took the conceal and carry course. I have a FOID card. But I believe when we address gun violence, we need to be very responsible with that as well. That does mean increasing the background checks and the screenings that are made, not allowing people to purchase them at gun shows, and providing, so gun violence is usually in certain neighborhoods or in certain situations. We need to create diversion programs for minors and other potential offenders so that we're being more proactive versus reactive. We can't wait for violence to happen and then decide that we want to do something. We need to address those issues ahead of time. And a lot of those things circle back to education, funding, housing security, families being safe and loving. So that would be my position. Thank you.
It's a really tough issue, and I gotta say, I agree with a lot of what Erica said. You know, in Danville, they just arrested 3 teenagers, 2 of them were juveniles, for some horrific murders. And those things are really tough to address in a constructive, comprehensive way across the country. And you know, some of these these are common sense things that we just can't pass through the Senate. You know, we need to come together in our communities and work with law enforcement, really educate law enforcement, educate the community on a lot of these Second Amendment issues. I mean, a lot of people have never even read the Second Amendment issue, Supreme Court opinions that are Second Amendment right advocates. And we need to be more educated as candidates, more educated as voters on these issues, because we all want to protect our rights and we all want to protect people. And that's what I will do as your representative. Thank you.
So one more reason why it's all about values and not issues. You know, where I work at my school, I've lost in my just about 10 years, just about a dozen of my students to gun violence in some way. And while a lot of us are sitting here arguing on Facebook about the assault weapons ban, and we've talked about that report over and over again, the one finding that was crystal clear about that assault weapons ban when they studied the law was that it didn't have enough time to work. It didn't have, whether you agree with it or not, it just wasn't enough time to figure out if it was actually going to do what it was supposed to do. And so the only solution to that is not voting in Democrats for the next 25 years. We've got to have a plan that works when Republicans take over every 15 to 20 years. And without that kind of consensus, without those kind of values that we decide that this is what's important, this is our priority, then that's never going to happen. Because we're just going to, that's by the way, same with healthcare, we're just going to repeal and replace over and over and over again, and nothing will ever get done. So that's why we need an approach that actually takes care of those people. Now, in that time that I have left, let me just mention that we have our FFLs, which are our #1 source of gun violence and illegal gun sales. Let me hand that over to you. As I say, we can go after those people without having to make a partisan issue of it.
All right, at this point, we will change to questions that the candidates have not seen in advance. These are coming from audience members. I will ask the candidates to remember, we did turn the mic down, so go ahead and hold it up a little closer now. Some folks are gesturing to me that they don't hear us. So this question will start with Ms. Weaver. What values do you support most and see as critical to defend or promote?
Well, I think values are unique to each person. What's most important to me is my family. But what impacts my family the most is my ability to provide for them. And so my ability to provide for them is by way of employment and education. And I circle back to that all the time because uninformed people are unemployable. People who are unhealthy are unemployable. And people need to have the ability to be healthy and educated and well-trained in order to provide for their families and to teach their families those same values so that they can grow up and be constructive and positive and contributing members of this society.
Values are important. Values are like John has said, are really what's important in this election. Especially when you think about where Mary Miller and Chris Miller are coming from. Where they use their values as a way to divide us as opposed to bring us together. I think values are supposed to bring us together. And my values are about what we can do to improve people's lives. When I went down to Rosa Claire and I heard, the librarian, which was the library is the only place for these children to go after school. And she made sure that she had food there for the children because they were so hungry. And when they would leave, she said, you need to take some food with you on the way out the door because that's probably the last food they were going to get before they went to school the next day or until Monday when they went back to school. And those are the values that I have. It's like when you hear something, you have to do something. And if you haven't heard that story, there's no way to tell it in 15 seconds, but go to my website, go to Facebook, and you can read that, okay? Thank you.
So when you're talking about my values, first off, as a political strategy, we mentioned Mary Miller. She is running specifically, if you look at her website, on family, faith, and freedom. That's her issues up there. And that's the front runner, that's the person who all the money's on, that's who the GOP wants to win. So I would argue that instead of trying to do something different with issues, we need to do those values better than she does.
Yeah.
Now when you talk about my values, I'm a Democrat. I believe in a strong federal government. That's what I believe in. I'm a progressive though, because I'm called to stand for people like the poor, the weak, the meek, the sick, the addicts, the forgotten, the imprisoned, the people that most of us don't think about too often. I won't say us, but the people that the rest of America doesn't think about too often. Those are the people I work with. Those are the people I'm called to serve. And not that I want to. I'd rather be waiting tables right now. It's a lot easier than teaching. The money's not as great, but it's a lot less stress. I'm called to do these things. And so those are my values, is that sacrifice for trying to do something better.
I was going to do healthcare, but I really do believe it is our small towns, small cities that are under threat. I'm afraid in 50 years, we're just going to have a Walmart and Amazon, and that is it. The values come from our small communities and our way of life, and I think a lot of people will believe in that. My wife and I actually moved back to Salem 10 or 15 years ago because of that. Raised our 3 boys in a small town. So, thank you.
Why is healthcare, well, I mean, we all know it's important, but why is it especially important for people with special needs or disabilities?
Okay, this is a really important question. If you have a chronic illness or you're living with disabilities, your health care is everything to you. Because if you lose your health insurance through work, or you lose, your Medicare is at threat, you could easily become very sick and end up in the hospital. And then that is a massive cost, not just to you, as just the stress and maybe even bills that you get from the hospital later on. It becomes a huge cost to the community, and to taxpayers. And what we need to do is make sure that we protect people with chronic illness and that are living with disabilities. And a lot of people want to work, maybe not a full-time job that have those conditions, but part-time. We need to make sure that we can allow them to do that without the stress of losing that healthcare coverage. Thank you.
People that are differently able to have access to health care is something that I experienced in my career as a teacher, obviously. And it's one of the reasons why we need to have multi-tiered health care with fail-safes for these types of people. Because the students I have, it's one thing to say, well, the state requires that you get an IEP, an individual education plan. But it's another thing to say that we're going to provide all of the accommodations that are required. It's another thing to say that we're going to give you all the meetings and have the social worker talk with the student about all those things. And so that only comes, first off, not from a system that Republicans and Democrats are trying to dismantle every 4 years. That only comes from consensus that continually builds and amends healthcare legislation every couple years. That only happens when we have consensus between parties.
Healthcare, honestly, in this country, should be a right, similar to education. For some of the very high-cost individuals, we'll probably have to set up some kind of funding similar to dialysis. There's special funding for that. So if you get special needs, high costs, I have to probably set that up, and I think there's going to be more of that coming along in the future. I just lost my train of thought. Guess I'm done. Sorry.
I just want to make sure I clarify. Your question was, why is healthcare important specifically for people with known disabilities or acknowledged? Okay. So I believe it's important because in most of those situations, people who have an identified disability are usually reliant on or living with someone else, and they need other people to help them with their services. So we need those to be available because when they are reliant upon state services in terms of Medicaid or Medicare, quite often their ability to get those services is based on the income of the person that's assisting them. And so we need to make sure that that's not challenged anymore, because if someone makes $5 more, then they are faced with the decision of cutting their income or quitting their job in order to provide for that person that they're caring for. So that's why it's important, because they need to be cared for, and most often they're not completely independent. Thank you.
Would you have voted to impeach Trump had you been in the House of Representatives? And B, what are your insights into this process or situation?
All right, let's do B first, because that's specific to the issue going on there. I think the evidence is clear. I'm guided by one set of values when it comes to not just the presidential impeachment, but all of criminal justice. And that's, did they do it? And it looks like he did it. Like, I don't know, like, I don't just agree with but he did it, right? I mean, he did it. So, that's all there is to it. Now, when we come to like Donald Trump in general, I mean, I start, again, like thousands of things. I start at the beginning. Like, didn't he rape his first wife? Like, didn't that happen? That's it for me. That's it. That's all I gotta say. That's a fact. That's something his lawyers have acknowledged, and that he said his wife wrote it in a document. He raped his first wife. All right? He held her, let's be graphic for a second. I'm sorry, folks. He held her down by her hair. He held her down, and he had sex with her against her will. She wrote about it in a divorce deposition. He acknowledged it. They wrote a book about it. They acknowledged it happened. I don't know, my last 5 seconds, I just don't think you could rape people and be president. Like, mic drop.
I believe our president was wanting to get impeached. If we didn't impeach him now, it was going to happen. And I think the Congress didn't have a choice. But at least they're exercising the checks and balances which the nation is founded on. Did he do it? I mean, I started thinking about this. If we didn't impeach him, what would have happened if we didn't find out with that whistleblower? You know, a year from now, another election manipulated in, Ukraine goes crazy into investigating the Bidens, wanting an extradition and making it in the papers. And a year from now, Ukraine's going to be calling in that shit. And we'll have a president, oh, it screws me up. We'll have a president that can be blackmailed. You know, so now we have two nations possibly we don't know what's going on with.
So, as the attorney, I have to take a different position. My first position is I can't make a joke about rape, not even for someone that I may not be fond of. I'm not going to relive that trauma for anyone in this room or anyone that watches this. And it's not necessarily if they did it or not. It's what you can prove. I'm a public defender. My job is to be a guardian of the process, to be a guardian of the Constitution. That's what I would do. If we can get it out there, yes, I would vote for it. That's what I would do if that's what the evidence supports. But he's not completely impeached. The House has impeached him. It's now up to the Senate. Are they going to be guardians? I don't know. It's a Republican-held Senate. I don't know if they're going to be a guardian of the process, but that's what's important to me. And so I want to make sure that we know that it's not funny, whether it's his wife or someone else, that isn't funny. That's a horrible thing. And I'm a guardian of the process, and that's what I would do. I would guard the process. Thank you.
Yes, sexual assault is not funny at all. Yeah, the impeachment is, certainly is completely overwhelmed the entire news cycle, political system, social system, everything. I mean, there has been no other news. Yes, I would have voted for it. The Senate Republicans seem to have no spine or independent thought at all. We're asking a lot of the American people. They have to not only understand our entire government system, but then apply new information to it, and have watched 12 hours of testimony for 3 days, and do so with an open mind. That's asking a lot, especially when they're overworked, underpaid, and have extremely high cost of health care. That's not a lot, that's asking too much. Especially when the House Democrats should go out and literally sell this to the American people. We need to be leading the charge on making sure that Americans are getting paid well, and that their health care is affordable and accessible wherever they are. Thank you.
I know I'm a funny guy, but I don't think that anyone's taking this lightly, all right? I mean, maybe I'm just so cynical and world-weary about this world that maybe it might seem like this is sarcastic or whatever, but I'm running for moral reasons. If you guys want to look back in July when I got into this race, I got into here not because of political reasons or I'm a Democrat. I got in here because I couldn't abide John Shimkus' silence in 2006 during the Mark Foley sex scandal. Those were little kids that he let go, that he didn't protect, and that's why I'm here in this race. So, yeah, I don't want to give the impression that we're treating this funny or whatever, but he did it. So let's get the rope.
Okay, in a November 2019 poll, 53% of all Americans, 77% of Democrats, and 52% of independents supported Medicare for all. Given that fact, will you support Medicare for all?
Medicare for all sounds like a great idea, and it makes for great headlines, but I have no idea how that would be funded. I would be open to some kind of system where, in our small town, we have my small business with 10 people, small business across town, 10. We could group together, get 50 or 60 or 100 people in our group, and then we could compete on the marketplace instead of going for the individuals. So Medicare for all, honestly, it sounds great, but I don't know how we would fund that. Thank you.
I will have to tell you that while I agree that we need everyone to have access to affordable health care, we need everyone to have health care coverage, I don't know necessarily that that particular plan as it is right now is something that we can get past and support. But I would be willing to support and co-sponsor any legislation that provides health care to people that we can sustain and fund.
Our healthcare infrastructure system is in bad shape. I mean, we need the mobilization of healthcare so that it goes to people where they are, especially if you happen to be more more low income. Sometimes you don't have a vehicle or one that you can depend on, and if you have any kind of specialized condition, you have to travel hundreds of miles in order to get to the specialist to treat you. And for so many of us, that is a bridge too far, because those bridges are in disrepair. We have to think about our rural issues and make sure that those are addressed, because any kind of Medicare for all solution won't solve the inherent problems in our rural healthcare system. Thank you.
Yeah, I support Medicare for all. I guess I'm the only one of the four who said that. So yeah, that's it. But yeah, that's the only thing that covers everybody, right? So in my mind, if the private insurance industry wants to keep their position as the gatekeepers of healthcare in this country, which they still are after the ACA was passed, then they're going to have to figure out some way to lower premiums, to guarantee lower premiums on a scale over the course of 10, 15 years. They're going to have to figure out a way to eliminate prescription coverage insurance. They're going to have to figure out a way to cover pre-existing conditions, keep legal insurance, all the stuff they were supposed to do 8 years ago, or 10 years ago, or 20 years ago, or 25 years ago, and they haven't done yet. So again, as I said back in my regular, if they're not going to step up and do it, then literally that's the government's job. It doesn't matter whether you're big government or small government. That's what Congress is supposed to do, is step in when people need help?
There is some really serious problems with the current health insurance market. So health insurance, the administration costs are astronomical. So is in the hospital system. If they can't address that themselves, we're going to have to do that for them. Because those costs are driving up the entire healthcare system costs for taxpayers, and that's unacceptable. So we're going to have to do that through legislation. Thank you.
I think we go back to what I said earlier. The Affordable Care Act does work. I haven't had one person declare bankruptcy on me since that's happened. I don't have to hear people worried about losing their houses since that's happened. We're even worried about getting divorced. So instead of whittling down Affordable Care Act, every year work on it, where the problems are, with the goal of getting insurance for everybody. Thank you.
Quick, it's just a fact. Recently, there was a decision to require hospitals and insurance companies to disclose what they are actually negotiating for in terms of their rate. That will make a very huge difference when it comes to our health insurance, because now those numbers won't be a secret. So you won't think you're getting a deal at $500, and you won't think you're getting a deal at $750, and you won't think that you're getting a deal at $145. We'll know, and that will level the playing field, and people will have a better opportunity to secure health care.
What are some ways that you can convince voters to flip their vote to Democrat?
Oh, this is awesome. Okay. It is, because, well, so it's no secret that we live in a largely Republican district, or a district where people claim that they're Republicans. That's the ballot that they pull. But I work with most of those people. I'm surrounded by those people every day, and I have conversations and relationships with them. And I know that we share some of the same concerns, some of the same values, some of the same issues. We want to see things differently. We want to see things improve. And so that's what I would do. I would talk to them. I would reach them where they are and just share those common experiences with them, because we're not very different. It's just the arguments that we make. So a lot of people have talked about Mary Miller. Mary Miller says that everything is based on her religious beliefs. But my religious beliefs, the same book that I read, says that we have to treat people accordingly. You treat people the way that you want to be treated. You are kind. You take care of your poor. You take care of your sick. You take care of your widows. So that's what I would do to get people to consider voting for me, because there are a lot of people who are in the middle and don't know where to go right now.
Would you actually focus on exactly what their message is? Because our message is one that actually helps people, helps this district move forward for once. They don't have an economic message that benefits any single community in this district. Massive tax cuts have never worked. Trickle down is more like the president's special tape or whatever. It never actually makes it all the way down to the worker. Look at what happened to Donnelly's, right? In 2018, I actually did the bother of what the journalists didn't do. It's like I went and found that 2018, they did a stock dividend payout of $55 million instead of investing that in the business. That's why they're closing. It's unfortunate, and now their stock is worthless. And it's so amazing that these companies get away with this, and nobody in Congress has done anything to stop it, because we have not demanded they do so. If that's the difference between Democrats and Republicans, at least this Democrat.
So this is what I've been talking about this whole time, and I think this is where I think some people in the audience that want to stick around and while we're all conversing can help back me up on this. This is what I've had luck with talking with people, and I can't put it any other way simply than I feel like I know how to talk to people, I know how to message people. When I announced my campaign and I said I had no chance of hell of winning this thing, and a lot of people in the Democratic Party called me up or messaged me and said, I don't know if that's the kind of message we want. And I said, well, that's the message that got me about $2,000 in donations to get my campaign off the ground. So, and also, that's not just from Democrats, that's from people who are Republicans too. So talk to people who've been knocking on doors with me, who've been sitting at county fairs and in parades with me, and they'll tell you that I'm a guy that knows how to talk to the other side and can express our values, our democratic, progressive values that I'm called to stand for. And I can stand up for them with other people and let them see that maybe those values they also share. Thanks.
I live and work and legislate in a very red district. have many friends, they're all Republicans, customers, very Republican, as well as Democrats. And I hear both their concerns and complaints. I'm not running as far left, I'm in the middle. I'm born and raised Democrat, but I do agree with some of the things that the Republicans supposedly stand for. I'm not sure if they still all do anymore, but definitely the Democrats. On the city council, we butt heads a lot, but at least we work together to at least get things done or come up with the best possible solution. We're not all very happy, but we still continue to be friends. Thank you.
There's going to be a census taken, and Illinois is going to be losing some seats, I would imagine, in Congress. How do you see this particular district being affected by the census?
Okay.
Because it's a very gerrymandered district in the first place.
It is. Yeah, this is the largest district east of the Mississippi River. It's certainly the largest in the state. I would suspect this district to become larger. I believe will become more rural. They'll continue to keep Champaign-Urbana itself out of it. We'll probably get a little more of Champaign County. We'll probably get more of southeast, the southeast portion of the state. That's what I would see. And I really think the Democratic Party should be focusing on rural America because, if you think about it, we have more poverty, we have more infrastructure problems, we need more union jobs to fix all of those, we need more education, we need more teachers that are dedicated to the students in their classroom, we need more healthcare providers. This is literally the place for Democrats to come and own. Because our values, our principles, our work ethic is exactly what rural America needs. We need to come here and we need to fight every single year, and we need to do it until we win. Thank you.
One of the reasons I'm running, and it's one of the reasons why you Charleston and Mattoon people and Coles County people are listening to a guy from Madison County, and while I'm driving 2 hours back home tonight after this, because this is an insane gerrymandered district. And I think that one of the reasons, again, I'm doing this values not issues thing, people say, what's your plan or what's your platform? And I'm like, well, hey, look, this is a bunch of, let's face it, political nobodies running against a bunch of other political nobodies on the Republican side. Guess what's happening to this district next time? It's going away. And they're going to give it to Londrigan or Davis or Bost or Funk or one of the other guys that actually has money and influence and will win. And I'm the guy up here saying, well, look, while everyone else counts us off as Mr. Irrelevant and has these kind of fake plans or saying, hey, we're going to try to get this done or this is what I'm for, I'm the one saying that I got a really simple message, that you can't just disappear this district and you can't just disappear my people, because we're still going to be here afterwards. And we're not just flyover country. And so that's what I'm going to do, is speak that message and more than anything, disrupt and tell them that we're not flyover country.
That's one of the topics that came up when people were asking me why I wanted to run. I was like, that seat's not even going to be there in 2 years. So that brings up the whole point of the term limits. I was like, you're not going to see me there in 20 years. I was like, I don't really need this, but I'm stepping in because I feel like I can have a voice there and voice some of the concerns of the constituents, especially the healthcare in our rural communities. On the flip side, maybe we should gerrymander or redistrict all the time, and maybe we'll have more variety representing us, quite honestly.
We all know that in 2 years this may not be the same, and the district may be redrawn to include the Coles County area back with the Champaign area as it was before, or it just may disappear, and we know that may happen. But even if only for 2 years, we have an opportunity to do something, right? We have an opportunity to show that this is an important seat, that this matters, and we have an opportunity to fight for that. And so I don't think it's going to get larger. They're not going to give us more space. They're not going to just add more counties. But I do think it will be redistricted in 2 years, and it will look very, very different. But we have to show them that it's worth looking at. And right now, no one's looking, okay? That's what I think. Thank you.
All right, the next question is sort of related, and it would be Mr. Hersey's turn to go first. Name one or two reasons, in your opinion, for the violent exodus of Illinois population.
That's my dad, who was born and raised in East St. Louis, was a military vet, and retired, or actually moved to the Quad Cities area to work for Homeland Security and TSA, and retired. And the moment he retired, got the hell out of Illinois, right over the border to the other Quad Cities in Bettendorf, because his property tax is insane. because he's sick of all the dysfunction in the government. And so, again, I can't blame the people that are leaving like that, because Illinois has been a mess, whether it's been Republican or Democrats. I think we've sent a lot of our governors to jail recently. They should really be in support of prison reform at this point. So all of that. Now, on a state issue, there's not much a federal representative can do except complain and work to influence that by courting other like-minded people around them to help solve that. And that's what I want to do. I think coming in as a non-establishment person who's coming out there and touting their non-experience and their working class values as a candidate is someone who can help hopefully change that tide and push that around. And if that doesn't work, then what will?
Exodus. We struggle with this city council in Salem. It's like we moved back there 10 or 12 years ago. I said that earlier. But what keeps us young people there, or why would young people want to come? I was like, not much fun. We instituted a mountain bike trail, and it took forever just to do that. But we have our 4 restaurants that we can eat at, and city council, we've been struggling for years trying to incentivize or bring any other restaurant in that I don't know what's on the menu beforehand. So it is a very difficult situation. I think Illinois has been getting a bad rap. It's really not that bad when you get down and look at the taxes and look where they go. It's just, we got to start feeling better about ourselves. Thank you.
I don't know if it's been violent, but I do know that there's been a large exit from the state. And I think that's mostly because of experiences. Everyone has a unique experience in this state. I wanted to leave Illinois. Before I had finished my education, I wanted to leave. Why? Because I was tired of being in poverty. I was tired of struggling. I was tired of looking for jobs. I was tired of going from job to job. I'm not going to list them all, but I've had a host of them. And then when I was able to get into a position where I could do what I wanted to do for my family, I loved it. I love downtown Chicago. I love being in East Central Illinois. I'm still here. I commuted from here to go to law school for 3 years so that I can keep my family here and keep them stable, because they were safe here, because they were comfortable here, because they were getting an education here that I appreciated and I respected. And so people are leaving because their experiences aren't good, but it's not for the same reason. Some people for jobs, some people for taxes, some people for families, some people for love. People are just tired of hurting. That's why they're leaving, and we need to make this a space where people are happy to be, and they know what their resources are, and they know what their options are. Thank you.
Yeah, it's, you know, when you think about it, the Democratic Party really created a vacuum in rural America. And, you know, back in the 80s, Reagan, you know, kind of took over the entire rural population, you know, called them Reagan Democrats. And we never really fought for these areas ever since. We need to come back and we need to fight for every one of these seats, from all the way down to the township level, to city council, all the way up to this seat. We need to put real funds and resources into every single level, because these people don't know anything but the Illinois Republican pessimism. That's all that they're selling. And so no wonder children, when they graduate, run right out the state lines, because what else do they have to live for? We should be fighting tooth and nail to give those kids something to believe in, to stay in their towns. Thank you.
Question. The one of you who will be facing a GOP opponent, of course, will be accused of being a socialist. What would you say to that?
He said the person facing a GOP opponent will be accused of being a socialist. And what will be their answer to that?
This is what I've been saying, the threat on our way of lives in our rural community. It's like pro-jobs, pro-capitalism, but 10 or 15 years from now, I am scared to death that we won't have radio stations or newspapers, and we'll have one great big Walmart and one more Amazon.com. That is socialism right there in my eyes. It's not capitalism. Capitalism's taking advantage of us, and we should be up in arms about it. They're taking our tax dollars. They don't bank there. T-shirts, Amazon T-shirts are not on the back of our local T-ball leagues. So, thank you.
I'm not gonna say anything to them, because if that's how they feel, that's how they feel, and I can't change their mind. Giving them the definition of socialism won't change their mind. What I would do is what I do every time someone says something about me that I don't like, every time someone makes an accusation that's not true. I'm gonna keep doing my good work, so.
It's like these labels, moderate, progressive, socialist. What people do when they use those, they use that to try to divide us, try to get people to turn off. We should be doing things to turn them on, to turn them on to our ideas, to our policies, to our values, and bring us together around something that's going to move our communities and our economies forward. People call me all sorts of things over the years, just today probably. And I'm kind of tired of that kind of politics. I'm sure everybody is too. We need to move to a different kind of society where we bring about a transformation. Because I don't know about anybody else, but this social media kind of bubble that people live in is not benefiting them, and is certainly not benefiting the country. And I am bound and determined to change the way I behave, and I am bound and determined to make that a better world for everybody else. Because if we don't start doing something different about it, who is?
I'd say, hell yeah, I'm a socialist. Yeah, I'm for any kind of ism that, if you're telling me capitalism is where Walmart has their wages subsidized by the government, who pays for food stamps and all that stuff for their employees so they can have a living, then yeah, I'm for whatever ism that is, whether you want to call it communism, socialism, capitalism. Nothing. Again, I would happen to disagree on that point about defining terms. As a public speaking teacher, I often tell my kids that you can't start a debate until you define those terms. So I would argue that some of the problem there is that we're jumping into debates without properly defining what we are. And again, I would say that the kind of capitalism, and by the way, that's a term going back to about how we can convince Republicans. I think that's something we all agree on. Republicans don't like crony capitalism either. They want Walmart to pay their employees their fair share, and they want Walmart to take some of that time, the load off of the government. So that's what we need to do.
What changes to our immigration policy and practices do you favor?
Okay, that's a very tough question. I'm not really sure who had it. I'm not sure. And the reason I say that is because we have a lot of things that are in play right now in order to help protect the people who are already here, help move along the process so that they can get their citizenship. But we don't have anything necessarily in play to help people who want to transition and become citizens and come into this country. While we offer the opportunity for people to come here and seek sanctuary, we're not doing that anymore. And we have to be able to do that. I can tell you that I'm not going to support a wall or anything else that's going to close off our borders, because that's not what we are made of. That's not what we were founded on. And as flawed as our system has been, as flawed as our country has been, that's something that we have to make sure we're still open to, is that we allow people to immigrate into this country.
Yeah, immigration is a bedrock of our country. We've done some of the wrong things across the history of America, as everybody knows. We should stop doing the things that we're doing wrong today. We need to make legal immigration easier, not harder, like the Trump administration is doing. We need to renew our values about refugees and the way we treat immigrants, period. If you don't know what you're going to do about these serious issues right now, because these are literally the American values, and the way that we are being seen across the world about this very issue is degrading our human rights record. And it is deteriorating our ability to exert soft power, and that is actually endangering our national security. We have to do the right things on these key issues, and if we don't, we're going to get ourselves more into situations that will increase the dangers to our troops, to our people.
So again, to be consistent, I'm not running based because I'm a Democrat or because of my progressive values on immigration. I'm running because of that picture in the New York Times of the drowned father and the baby, those refugees there. That's why I'm running, for the same reason that I couldn't abide John Shimkus' silence, for the same reason that I can't abide our president being a rapist, the same reason I can't abide that we have kids who are in cages, who are down there for no other reason that they believe this lie about America, the American dream. So that's why I want to fix our immigration problem, because people are dying, because there are people that are being treated like animals down our southern border. We have a crisis down there. So yeah, we can talk all day long about amnesty and all these other problems, but until we figure out the problem of making sure people don't die in custody and aren't sleeping in cells with their own human waste and are there for days at a time with no representation, which is, by the way, what the definition of tyranny in this country is, right? Then who cares about 3% GDP growth?
I also agree. The separation of families and putting people in cages on the border is immoral and inhumane. But we're a nation that was built on immigrants. All of us were an immigrant at one time. We need to build on DACA and work on immigration reform, work on it yearly, figure out what is going wrong and work on it. The wall is a huge waste of time. Ask China how much theirs costs and what they do with it. It's a tourist destination. The one in France didn't work either. It's just a great headline. Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
I want to clarify something. One, immigration policies and how it's being executed are two different issues. Children being separated from their families is not a part of our policy. That is how this administration is executing that. That is a flaw that is totally separate from the question that I think was presented. In terms of not knowing or not saying specifically what I would do, I don't make false promises. I'm not going to tell you that I can do something that I can't do. I can tell you that I'm committed to doing something, but I'm not going to get up here and tell you that I can do something that I can't do. I'm not going to give you some extraordinary story about something that maybe is true and maybe isn't. I am going to tell you what I know. I am an attorney, I'm a mom, and I'm an advocate, and I advocate for people every day, and I do it based on facts, and I do it from my heart, and I kick butt, so.
At this point in time, it is time to end the questions and start the candidates' closing statements. Mr. Gaither, you are up for going first.
Sure.
And each person gets 2 minutes for closing statement.
Yeah, thank you all so much for coming out and having such great questions. My name is Kevin Gaither. I really love this district. I grew up here. I weeded beans in this district. I've been in every single community. I really love the people. That's why when I saw that library down in Rose Claire, and I heard that they might close their doors because the leaking roof, and they hadn't received their check from the state for almost a year. I got on the phone immediately to Susanna Mendoza, the comptroller, and within a week they had their check. That's the kind of leadership that I will offer. It's something where you listen to a problem and then you actually get to work to solve it. It's a on the ground, listening to people and then learning how to get the job done. Not that, this is about people. It's not about ideology. It's not about, which party you are, if you're moderate or progressive. Those are just labels. People matter. People matter a lot. And right now they're hurting a great deal. Everybody can say how great the economy is. But we all know people are making way less than they should on almost every single scale. The economy has been broken for a long time. We haven't been funding our priorities for decades. My entire life, I've watched every single metric just break apart. The factories are all gone, and nobody did a thing to stop it. We have to come together as a people and say enough is enough. I am so glad that you're here. I'm looking for your support and your help in this race. Kevin Gaither is my name, and thank you so much for coming. Thank you.
All right, so I guess if you guys are undecided, my message is this is a dangerous time to be undecided in America. I grew up, as I mentioned earlier, on military bases all over the world. I grew up in Germany as the Berlin Wall came down. I watched a country that was divided bitterly come together and have to reconcile what happened with who they are today. And that's a rough process, and that's something I would not wish on any nation. And that's something that's a head that I see us coming to pretty soon, unfortunately. So I'd like to change that. Now, compromise is part of the game. I would argue, though, that if you have one side over here and you have one side over here, then you would compromise right in the middle. And that's great. That's what America's all about. But if you have one side over here and then the other side is just slightly off to the left, right over here, then where you come together at is just a little past center right. And I don't think that's a direction that the people in this room are comfortable with. Now, unfortunately, I feel like this is the most difficult part of my campaign because if you're here right now talking and asking questions, you're probably an issues-based voter. As an English teacher, I sympathize with you. So what I'm hoping gets through today is that we see that it's not issues, that the vast majority, the 17,000 people that are going to vote in the primary, aren't necessarily issues-based voters. They're values-based voters. And hopefully we choose somebody that represents and embodies the values they think are important. That's it.
Well, as you can tell, I am very new at this. I've been doing this less than 3 months, but I promise you that I'm learning very quickly. I'd like to thank Dr. Ludlow for moderating this debate. This election is critically important and tremendous opportunity to flip the 15th district back to a Democratic candidate. As I stated earlier, driving down healthcare costs is of utmost importance. I am someone who represents the struggles and understands the needs of our district. I have a proven track record of getting things done in government, and I've won 2 elections, believe it or not. My name is Craig Morton, and I promise to be your advocate as your representative in Congress, and I'm asking for your vote on March 17th. Thank you, and have a good evening. Good afternoon.
Once again, I think this is perfect. I am running because it's important for people who understand what people are experiencing and what they are doing in those positions to be in office. We don't need anyone to go to DC who isn't going to take it seriously. This isn't a field trip. This is a very serious position. It is one of the most critical positions in our government. The legislative body is a very powerful, powerful body. I take that very seriously. When I was in 5th grade, my teacher, I told her I was mad about something, and she stopped me and said, "Excuse me?" She said, "Mad is for dogs and crazy people. You're a young lady. You get upset. You get angry. You get frustrated." Now, I'm not trying to tell you to call everyone that's mad crazy or dogs. What I'm telling you is I learned to be very conscious about what I say, to be very intentional, and to pay attention to those things. I want to bring dignity back into this this process. Poor people, I'm a poor person. I grew up in poverty. I raised my children in poverty, but I did it with dignity. I believe that decorum is important. I don't think that this is something that we can just throw to the side because it may be gone in 2 years or because this is not a propaganda for me. I have no fancy term to throw at you. I am who I say that I am. I work my butt off. You can ask anyone about that. I have worked hard for my students in Mattoon. I work hard every day for my clients in the public defender's office. I have volunteered throughout this community. I volunteered up and down 57, in Champaign, in Chicago. When I see people who are hurting, I give them my very best. And I don't do that lightly. I didn't enter this race lightly. This is time that I'm taking away from my children. So it's very important to me. I want your vote. I bet on me. If you are a smart person, you would bet on me. I'm worth the bet. I'll give you exactly what I tell you that I will. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, at this time, I must close our forum. I want to thank our candidates for your attendance and your attention to the issues that are important to the people in this room. I also really want to thank each and every one of you for the various contributions you make to making our community and our state the best it can be. I want to thank everybody in the audience who attended and participated. And again, many, many thanks to the members of the Coles Progressives and the Charleston Huddle who worked really hard to plan and co-host this forum. Have a lovely rest of your Sunday, everyone, and remind your neighbors and friends to vote.